with this, South Africa's senior national football team, Bafana Bafana, will depart for Gabon this afternoon ahead of the 2015 Africa Cup of Nations in Equatorial Guinea, which begins in just 10 days' time. The last time South Africa qualified for the continental tournament was in 2008, and they were eliminated in the first round. All quotes, however, coming from the camp are that this group of young players are confident about qualifying Group C, and that's a group which contains Algeria, Ghana and Senegal. To chat about all things Bafana and AFCON is a football journalist, Jonty. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to you, and what a way to actually begin the sporting year with the Africa Cup of Nations.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic tournament. Obviously, it's good that it's happening, because for a while there it looked a bit iffy with Morocco pulling out, but they found a country finally, Equatorial Guinea, to host it. So yeah, we're all looking forward to it, and it should be a good tournament.
Okay, so let's chat a little bit about the so-called group of death, Group C, that Bafana Bafana now find themselves in. Lots made of it, but Sheikh Mashaba and his players are quite bullish, saying it may be called the group of death, but they don't say who's going to die.
Yeah, I mean, they are very confident. I think they've got good reason to be. They came through qualifying brilliantly, you know, unbeaten, winning the group with a game to spare, knocking reigning champions Nigeria out in the process. I mean, they did only draw twice with Nigeria, but if you can knock them out, if you can knock out the reigning champions, why not be confident against Algeria, Ghana and Senegal? Having said that, it is an extremely tough group. Algeria, of course, the #1 side in Africa at the moment, did so well at the World Cup. Ghana, who were also at the World Cup, and Senegal, who seem to be finding their feet again after a while, not really performing as they might.
You mentioned the teams that we're going to be going up against, and let's chat a little bit more about Algeria. They are former winners, like South Africa, of the Africa Cup of Nations. They desperately want to give their fans something to cheer about, and they've also got the reigning BBC Footballer of the Year, Yassine Brahimi, that's also playing for their team. Just tell us a little bit about Algeria and the kind of opposition that they're going to pose in our very first match on Monday the 19th.
Yeah, I mean, this is a side that's been coming up in Africa again for some time now. They were at the 2013 Africa Cup of Nations in South Africa, where they didn't perform particularly well. I think they lost their first 2 games and were knocked out. Then they came to Brazil this year, got to the last 16, ran Germany probably as close as anyone. Germany had to go to extra time to beat them. And they've got some really talented players. You mentioned Brahimi. Islam Slimani has scored plenty of goals in the Champions League this season with Porto. Sofiane Feghouli is doing very well with Valencia, a side who are up there in La Liga this season. So they've got some really talented players, and you know, that's I think that's about as difficult an opening match that South Africa could have asked for when the draw came out.
And I think Sheikhs probably wouldn't have wanted to have it any other way. He's been unbeaten, and his record is seriously going to be tested.
Well, I mean, he's never lost a competitive match, Sheikh, so, you know, it's definitely going to be tested in this tournament. But, yeah, like you say, it's possibly better for... I spoke to Kaizer Chiefs coach Stuart Baxter, and he said he feels it's better that South Africa have these difficult teams, you know, where nobody... If they don't win, well, they've played the #1 side in Africa, they've played 2 other teams from the top 5 in Africa, and, you know, it's been a really tough group. Whereas if they had an easier-looking group, the expectations might be sort of out of the park, so to speak, yeah. And they might wilt under the pressure. Whereas now they can say, well, you know, the pressure's a bit off us because we are the underdogs. However, you know, they say that they've got a chance, and they do have a chance. But if you look at statistically, they're the underdogs in the group, and so they can have a bit of pressure off them and really go out and give it a go.
We mentioned some of the players that play in UEFA Champions League football that are part of the Algeria national team. Our one UEFA Champions League player, Ntulani Serrero, is not part of Bafana Bafana. What do you make of that decision?
Well, at first it surprised me, like it surprised everyone, I think. I mean, you know, for me, he's the best midfielder in South Africa. He plays at Ajax Amsterdam. He's been playing, as you said, in the Champions League this season against teams like Barcelona. He came in and he scored the goal against Sudan in Durban, and that was part of the 2-1 win that qualified Bafana for the AFCON, and he'd started to play his best football for Bafana Bafana. So it's disappointing in that sense that he's not going to be there. But Sheikh Mashaba is a strict coach in the sense that he wants to treat everyone fairly, and the fact is that the provisional camp, the Boxing Day camp, it started on Boxing Day and it finished on the 30th. Every player, apart from Serrero and Dean Furman, who was excused because he still had football left to play for Doncaster, turned up. Serrero went on his Christmas break on the 21st of December, was in South Africa, and didn't turn up for cap. And I think that's what upset Mashaba. So I can understand why the Bafana coach has dropped him in that sense. But at the same time, it's a bit disappointing that we're not going to see one of South Africa's best players in Equatorial Guinea.
I think Mashaba has been trying really hard, and he's getting it right to just change the culture and the mindset of the team. And he's got this young group of players that are doing just that, that will literally die out on the field.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he's spoken in this when he announced the squad in his press conference about, and even after the Zambia game now, about eradicating this mentality of, you know, we might go there and you know, try and sort of maybe qualify second in the group, or we might get a draw here in qualifying. His ambitions from the start was to win qualifying matches away from home, and he won 2 and he drew with Nigeria. He did brilliantly, and he's really got the team believing in themselves. I mean, every player you speak to will tell you how unbelievable the spirit in the camp is, how everyone's really sucked up, and even how they can win this AFCON. They really, I think, believe that they can. Whether they can is a whole other story, but they believe it, and you know, it's hard to argue at the moment with Shakes Mashaba. You can say what you like about him dropping Serrero, about this player should be in the squad, about that, but while he's getting results, who can argue with him? He's got the team firing. They as I said, they qualified with the game to spare, so you know, let's show some faith in him and let's get behind him, and I really think this team could achieve something.
Yeah, absolutely. And in 30-degree heat at the Orlando Stadium over the weekend, also, despite not a great performance, still coming away with the 1-0 win over Zambia. What do you make of the team and their chances at the Africa Cup of Nations?
Well, I think they have a chance. I think, you know, everyone keeps saying it's about getting out of the group, and once you get out of the group, it's kind of anyone's game. I also think that often bigger teams at the AFCON, or more favoured teams, don't perform. Ghana, for example, have been favourites for the last 3-4 AFCONs, or one of the favourites, haven't won it. Ivory Coast, similarly, you know, they haven't won it. So the big teams can sometimes freeze on that stage. We talked about Algeria, the 2013 AFCON in South Africa, didn't perform. These players are in the middle of their club seasons. They're sometimes not quite up to it when it comes to the Africa Cup of Nations. I think that if Bafana, with the team spirit that Shakes Mashaba has installed in the team, they have every chance of getting out of the group, and then like anything is really possible. So I think they can go all the way. At the same time, they can also, you know, lose that group quite easily, and it won't necessarily be because of the coach or the tactics, because they're up against 3 extremely good teams. So it's really in the balance, but they do have every chance.
And it's like that with tournament football, is that actually anything can happen. It just takes one good result or one bad result. No,
absolutely. And obviously the Algeria game looks key at the moment. You know, first game on the 19th against the current #1 team in Africa, a team a lot of people fancy to win this tournament. If they can go out and get a positive result in that game, then I think they'll fly. Of course, if they end up on the end of a heavy defeat, then it's going to be a whole different story. But that game certainly holds a key to what will happen in the rest of the tournament.
Just tell us a little bit about the place where South Africa and Group C are based, because you're going to be flying out for the Africa Cup of Nations in just a couple of days' time. So you've been trying to find accommodation there. Tell us a little bit about where they're going to be based and how that may or may not favour them.
Well, it's a city called Mongomo. It's not one of the cities that was used in the 2012 Nations Cup, which Equatorial Guinea co-hosted with Gabon. The games were hosted in Malabo and Bata, and I think those 2 facilities are very capable, and the cities are capable of hosting a tournament. Mongomo is a smaller town, from what I understand, the place that they're going to. They've had to rip up the whole pitch in the stadium there, and they've flown in a pitch from Spain, another surface, so it depends. These pitches, sometimes they hold and they're good. I've seen a picture of it, it looks pretty good. So they've flown in a new pitch. I've heard the Senegal coach, Alain Giresse, complaining about the facilities. He says they're not good enough. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I mean, I think the CAF president, Issa Hayatou, has said there might be hitches simply because of the fact that they've hosted this so last minute. But I think, you know, Shakes Mashaba always preaches that, you know, you just have to deal with what you have to deal with, and he won't complain about it, and the team won't complain about it, because that's not their attitude. And I think that helped them in qualifying. In Sudan, they played on a bad pitch. They won the game. In Brazzaville, the pitch was artificial. It wasn't the best pitch. They won that game. So I don't think they'll be complaining, and I think that's the attitude you have to have when you're going into tournaments like this.
Stunning stuff. Jonty, thank you very much for coming to chat to us. That's football journalist Jonty Mark chatting about Bafana Bafana and their chances at the Africa Cup of Nations, which gets underway in just 10 days' time in Equatorial Guinea. They, of course, stood in for the previous hosts, Morocco, who decided they would not be able to host the tournament.